What if the Vatican, the heart of Christian power, trembles not at the devil but at a truth carved in stone thousands of years before Jesus walked the earth? In the dusty plains of ancient Mesopotamia, the Anunnaki, godlike beings from the heavens, whispered secrets of humanity's origins that echo louder than any gospel. These aren't myths, they're memories etched in clay, challenging everything the Church holds sacred. Why would the Vatican fear these ancient voices? Because they threaten to rewrite the story of creation itself. Welcome to a tale of cosmic mystery and hidden wars. Comment 77. If you're ready to uncover the truth, hit that like button to keep this story alive and subscribe, because this journey will shake your soul. Shadows of Mesopotamia, the Anunnaki's dawn. Imagine a world before empires, before the Bible, where the Tigris and Euphrates rivers cradled the cradle of civilization. Here in ancient Sumer, around 4000 BCE, scribes carved stories into clay tablets, tales of beings so powerful they shaped the world. The Anunnaki, meaning those who came from heaven, weren't just gods, they were architects of humanity. In texts like the Epic of Gilgamesh and Enuma Elish, they're described as towering figures descending from the stars, decreeing fates and molding cities. The Tablet of Enki declares, the Anunnaki established their council, and their decisions were binding for eternity. These weren't fairy tales. They were history to the Sumerians, as real as the rivers they lived by. The Anunnaki didn't just rule, they created. The Atrahasis tells of them mixing their blood with clay to fashion mankind, not as an act of love, but as a practical need for workers. This wasn't the gentle hand of the biblical God forming Adam in Eden. It was a calculated act by beings of flesh and bone, perhaps from beyond the stars. Can you feel the weight of a creation story that doesn't start with divine love, but with cosmic engineering? Share your thoughts in the comments. Let's dive into this ancient puzzle. For the Sumerians, the Anunnaki were undeniable, their decrees carved into the very stones that built their cities. Temples rose in their honor from Eridu to Nineveh, where priests and kings bowed to their will. The Sumerian king list claims, kingship descended from heaven, suggesting the Anunnaki handed down the blueprint for civilization itself. These stories weren't whispers in the dark. They were shouted in ziggurats recorded by scribes who believed they were preserving truth. What if the oldest stories we know hold secrets we've forgotten? Hit that like button if this ancient world intrigues you, and let's keep exploring. For African American believers, this resonates deeply. Our ancestors, through slavery's shadow, held on to stories of origins, tales of resilience, of divine purpose woven through suffering. The Anunnaki narrative, like those oral traditions, speaks of a truth too strong to be silenced, a history that survives in fragments waiting to be reclaimed. The Vatican's dilemma, a rival creation. Fast forward to the Middle Ages, where the Vatican stood as the unchallenged voice of God in Europe, shaping kings and empires with the Bible's authority. But in the quiet corners of its libraries, a shadow loomed. Not Satan, but the Anunnaki. Why fear beings from clay tablets older than Moses? Because their stories echoed the Bible's own, a great flood, a garden of creation, humanity shaped from earth. The Epic of Gilgamesh, uncovered later but known through fragments, told of a flood so like Noah's it sent chills through scholars. The Atrahasis spoke of mankind's creation, mirroring Genesis, but predating it by centuries. What happens when the Bible's stories aren't the first? Comment below. Does this shake your view of Scripture? The Church thrived on control, its narrative of one God, one creation, one path to salvation anchoring its power. But the Anunnaki offered a rival tale. Humanity crafted not by a singular divine will, but by a council of celestial beings. If true, the Church's foundation, God's unique act of creation, crumbled. The devil could be fought with exorcisms and doctrine, but the Anunnaki were carved in stone, their story backed by archaeology, not faith. St. Augustine warned, "Wherever truth may be found, it belongs to his master." Confessions. But what if that truth belonged to no master at all? This wasn't just theology. It was a crisis of history. The Vatican couldn't burn the tablets or erase Sumerian cities. Instead, it faced a silent dread. What if people learned their origins weren't divine, but engineered? For African American believers, this tension mirrors our own history of suppressed truths, stories of our roots buried, yet rising through spirituals and resilience. The Anunnaki's tale, like ours, refuses to stay buried. A silent war, the Vatican's hidden battle. By the Renaissance, the Vatican's fear took shape in a secret war, not with swords, but with silence. Papal agents scoured Europe, not just for heretics, but for manuscripts that whispered of Babylon and Sumer. The Vatican Library, a fortress of knowledge, hid translations of Sumerian texts locked away from prying eyes. One translation of Atrahasis read, "Mankind was fashioned from clay by the blood of gods." Imagine the horror in those candlelit halls, a creation story where humanity S-makers weren't divine but physical, perhaps extraterrestrial. Can you imagine a truth so dangerous it had to be locked away? Share in the comments. Let's uncover this hidden war. The Inquisition, known for burning heretics, also burned books. Any whisper of the Anunnaki was deemed heresy, not for contradicting God's existence, but for predating his story. Explorers returning from the Middle East with clay fragments faced confiscation. Priests redefined demons, not as fallen angels, but as distorted echoes of these older beings. Early church fathers like Origen hinted at this, referencing sons of heaven and giants in uneasy tones, as if wrestling with myths too stubborn to die. This wasn't just censorship, it was survival. The church's grip on salvation depended on its monopoly over origins. If the Anunnaki were real, not spirits to be exorcised, but history to be faced, the Vatican's narrative was incomplete. For African American believers, this echoes our own fight for truth, oral histories dismissed as folklore, yet carrying the weight of lived experience. Have you ever fought to reclaim a truth others tried to erase? Hit that like button if this resonates, and let's keep digging. The tablets speak, archaeology's unstoppable voice. The 19th century changed everything. In the ruins of Nineveh, archaeologists like Austin Henry Layard unearthed libraries of cuneiform tablets, thousands of years old, filled with Anunnaki stories. The Epic of Gilgamesh, translated by George Smith in 1872, sent shockwaves through Europe. Its flood story, so like Noah's, proved the Bible wasn't unique. It was part of a deeper, older tapestry. The Sumerian king list declared, "Kingship descended from heaven, established in Eridu," tying human rule to the Anunnaki, not a singular god. What if the Bible's stories are echoes of something ancient? Comment 77 to join this journey. Let's see where it leads. The Vatican couldn't fight this. Museums displayed the tablets. Universities taught them. The Enuma Elish described a council of Anunnaki shaping the cosmos, their decrees binding for eternity. These weren't myths to dismiss. They were artifacts, solid as the stones of St. Peter's Basilica. The Church chose silence, a calculated refusal to engage. To debate the Anunnaki was to admit their weight, and silence was safer than confrontation. But silence spoke louder than denial, betraying a fear no sermon could hide. For African American believers, this moment feels familiar. Our history too was buried, records of our ancestors' lives erased, yet uncovered through archaeology, oral tradition, and resilience. The Anunnaki's tablets, like our spirituals, are voices from the past that refuse to be silenced, demanding to be heard. The 20th century, a crisis deepens. As the world wars tore Europe apart, scholars found time to translate more tablets, each one adding to the Anunnaki's story. The Tablet of Enki described their council. The Atrahasis detailed humanity's creation. Universities from London to Chicago taught that Sumer-S gods were not fantasies, but the foundation of civilization. The Vatican's silence grew deafening, noted by historians like Thorkild Jacobson, who wrote, "The Sumerians did not dream of gods as we dream of myths. They recorded memories of those who ruled them. What if our myths are really memories too real to ignore? Share your thoughts below. Let's keep this story alive." The Church couldn't burn museums or silence universities as it once did heretics. The Anunnaki weren't demons to be cast out. They were history, carved in clay, displayed in glass cases. Their story suggested humanity's origins were tied to beings who walked the earth, taught laws, built cities. This wasn't theology, it was archaeology, and no amount of silence could erase it. For African American believers, this mirrors our own rediscovery of roots. DNA tracing us to ancient kingdoms, stories of resilience rising from ashes. The 20th century saw the church pivot, folding ancient myths into vague metaphors, calling the Anunnaki cultural stories rather than confronting them. But silence isn't protection, it's surrender. The tablets kept speaking, their words louder than any papal decree. What happens when truth outlasts power? Hit that like button if this question stirs you, and let's see what it means. The Anunnaki today, a truth unburied. In the 21st century, the Anunnaki aren't confined to dusty libraries, they're everywhere. Documentaries, books, and YouTube channels like Tales of Mythology bring their story to millions. Zecharia Sitchin, though controversial, spent decades translating Sumerian texts, arguing the Anunnaki were not gods, but advanced beings, perhaps extraterrestrial, who shaped humanity. Critics call it speculation, but the tablets remain real, tangible, undeniable. The Enuma Elish proclaims, "The Anunnaki raised high their voices, decreeing the order of the cosmos." These words, carved 4,000 years ago, still echo. The Vatican remains largely silent, rarely addressing these narratives except as metaphors. But silence can't bury history. Archaeological digs from Babylon to Ur uncover more tablets, each one a voice from the past. Museums display them, scholars study them, and the world listens. What if the truth we've ignored is the key to who we are? Comment below. Does this change how you see our origins? For African American believers, the Anunnaki story is a call to embrace truth, no matter how buried. Our history, like Sumer's, was suppressed, yet it rises through archaeology, music, and faith. The Anunnaki challenge us to ask, what else have we forgotten? What truths lie waiting in the stories of our ancestors? Their narrative, like ours, is about resilience, surviving empires, outlasting silence. A call to seek the truth. The Anunnaki enigma isn't about proving the Vatican wrong. It is about seeking truth wherever it leads. These ancient beings, whether gods, aliens, or memories of a lost world, represent a past too solid to dismiss. The church Gizfir wasn't tea of the devil, but of a history that couldn't be controlled, a story carved in stone that predates scripture. For every believer, especially African American Christians, this is a reminder. Truth endures, like spirituals sung in secret, like tablets buried in sand. Stonehenge, another ancient mystery, taught us that humanity built monuments to connect with the divine. The Anunnaki story does the same, pointing to a people who look to the stars for meaning. What truths are you searching for in your own life? Subscribe to keep exploring these mysteries, share this video with someone who loves a good story, and comment 77 to join the journey. The Anunnaki stand as a haunting presence, their voices echoing across millennia. They ask us to question, to seek, to honor the past. Thank you for diving into this enigma with me. May it stir your heart to chase truth, no matter how ancient, no matter how hidden. Until next time, keep listening to the whispers of history.